In my episode 38, I read ghost stories from Korean schools. This week, we are taking a look at ghost or paranormal sightings from universities. As in many East Asian countries, in Korea there's very heavy emphasis in higher education, which often equate to universities. Currently, about 70% of all high school graduates enter university, so by now uni has become just a matter of course in one's educational path, rather than a prestige. Unless you get a place in the top-ranking unis, of course. As I mentioned in the episode about schools, the whole years in middle and high schools in Korea can be pretty oppressive and harshly driven towards the almighty goal of entering the best uni one could aim for. After the teenage years like that of a racing horse with blinkers on, many uni students feel a bit lost and dazed. Some falls into the party lifestyle, while others are disillusioned that uni is not the promised land that was deemed as throughout their teenage years. The new kind of sense of pressure to face as a young adult regarding love life, military service, and future career all add on to the psychological burden for many uni students, and I think such jittery energy does contribute to these alleged paranormal stories from universities. So, here are 6 allegedly true ghost stories from Korean universities. As always, handpicked, translated, and narrated by your host, Anthony. I was an art student. This is what I experienced with my colleagues in my uni. We were all freshmen then and were having lunch at the canteen in the basement of the art department building. One colleague, let's call her Mi-jung, wanted to go to the toilet. We told her to make it quick as we were to have a meeting with some senior students shortly. Significant time passed, but Mi-jung didn't come back. Complaining among ourselves, we 3 went to the toilet next to the canteen. I called out from the outside, "Mi-jung!"
Yes.
Indeed, Mi-jung replied from the inside. It was just... her voice sounded odd. Normally, Mi-jung had clear and ringing voice, enough to be easily heard across a big lecture room. But just now, it still sounded like her, but weirdly weak, limp, and sticky. Maybe it's just my memory, but I'd say almost creepy. We 3 outside just laughed. "What are you up to? Spent all your energy peeing? What's taking you so long?" The most short-tempered me walked into the toilet and started checking on the cubicles. Well, she's not here. Not here either. This one's empty too. And I reached the last one, which was empty. Mi-jung wasn't there at all. When I reported it back, the 2 outside didn't believe me at first. Understandably. Didn't we all hear Mi-jung replying after all? One girl even went inside to check herself. We were all dumbfounded, trying to comprehend the situation, when... "What are you doing here?" Mi-jung called out, appearing from the corridor. Only then our thought reached, it might have been a ghost that answered us. We told what just happened to the senior students at the meeting. Their response was nonchalant.
"So you are the first freshman who met the ghost this year?"
Apparently, the ghost was a well-known feature among the students in the art department. Back in the late 1990s, a female art student was stabbed by her obsessive ex. She bled too much and died in the lobby of the building before an ambulance arrived. Since then, there were all kinds of accounts of ghost apparition. Some just heard a voice like we did. Some heard persistent knocks on the door when nobody else was around. One senior student was woken up by somebody and saw the ghost herself, face to face. I was still reluctant to believe it, and wanted to believe it rather was the sound of wind from the window, until I checked back at the toilet and found there was no window at all. Well, of course, it's on the basement level. Was it really the ghost then? This happened one rainy October day in my university dormitory. The dorm had strict curfew hours, and each end of the corridor were locked with a security grill's door at night. As there was no traffic at night, occupants of the rooms near the end of the corridor would leave their wet umbrellas out near the security grill to dry overnight. And one female student staying on the 6th floor found her umbrella gone missing. She went to the security office, and the security guard and she checked on the record of the surveillance camera. About 3 a.m, a pale white hand barged through the other side of the security grill, grabbed the student's umbrella, and disappeared with it. Problem was, its arm was much too pale and much too long to have belonged to a normal person. It protruded from the bottom of the security grill and groped around in weirdly wobbling movement, which again seemed impossible for a person with a normal bone structure. They checked other surveillance camera around the dorm building, but they could not see anything going in or out at all. What could that have been? I used to drink a lot when I was a uni student. My home was a bit away from my university, and should the drink with the colleagues or at the gathering last into late hours, I would just find anywhere to crash for the night. That night too, the gathering with the friends ended pretty late at night. As I often did before, I decided to sleep at the club room in the student hall. I was then a member of a band club. For the noisy nature of the club, our room was in the remotest corner of the top floor. It was quiet there. Early summer night was pleasant enough, and dirty but comfy old sofa would make a nice bed for the night. But for some reason, I couldn't fall asleep easily, even though I had drunk quite a bit. So I just fiddled with this and that musical instrument, and sang a little too. Then a friend called me. The friend slammed me for drinking too much and sleeping around, that a girl should take care of oneself, etc. But I didn't mind. I actually welcomed to have somebody to chit-chat with, because I was getting bored alone there. I set the phone on the speaker, relaxed on the sofa, and gently plucked notes from a guitar while talking with a friend. But then she, in the middle of a sentence, screamed sharply. It made me jump, of course. "Hey, what's up? Why do you scream?" I said. But friend denied that she ever screamed. She even told me not to pull her legs. Well, considering she lived with her parents, she wouldn't have screamed just to prank me so late at night. Maybe my phone was a bit off, I guessed. We continued chatting, but once again, out of blue, I was freaking out now. I wasn't even sure if the scream was from the phone anymore. Didn't you hear it? I heard the scream again, I said.
What scream are you talking about? I can hardly hear you because of the drum you are playing so loud,
Friend said. I immediately packed and left the club room. I was playing guitar and wasn't even near the drum set. I ran down the long hallway and called for the elevator while my friend was still on the phone.
Hey, didn't you say you were alone? Who's the screaming next to you? Something's wrong?
She said. That was the last time I dared to spend night in that club room. In 2008, I was doing my master's. My work mainly evolved around research, and that year my lab moved to a different building, which also housed the theaters for the forensic medicine and human anatomy classes, and inevitably, the morgue cabinet room for cadavers. I often had to stay in the lab till late and was often the last one to leave the building. And in such quiet, lone hours in the lab, I often heard various noises around me, even though I was sure I was the only one in the whole building, like the creaking noise of a revolving chair turning, or somebody dragging desks and chairs, or footsteps wandering up and down the hallway and floors. And I can tell you I'm really not the type to get easily paranoid or imagine things. My master's course always included late hours in the lab, and such weird phenomena only started happening when my lab moved into that building. Also, if anybody else was around, such noises didn't occur. And then, this particular incident happened that really made me to have a second thought about ghosts, even though I'm a scientist. That evening, my day finished a bit earlier than usual, about at 9. I say early, but as usual, I was the last one to leave the building, as all the other students and staffs left at about 5 or 6. On the way out, I felt the call of nature and popped into the toilet by the lobby. I usually didn't use that toilet. Not only my lab was on the second floor, but the weirdly high-ceilinged space and the fact that the right next to it was the morgue full of cadavers made it a bit spooky. But that day, I couldn't be bothered to go back up to the second floor, so just used that toilet. As soon as I walked into it, I had a weird sense that there was somebody there. So much so I checked if all the cubicles were empty first, even though I was urgent. But while I focused on my business, I heard somebody temperamentally pulling toilet rolls from the cubicle next door. Now, the toilet had a self-closing door that creaked fairly loudly, and I didn't hear it opening and closing all the while. I still wanted to think somebody must have come in so quietly, or perhaps I simply didn't hear it because I was so focused with my own business. But when I came out of the cubicle, I saw the other two still empty. It was getting all weird, but I still had to wash my hands, so was bending down at the basin when suddenly something pulled my backpack backwards. It was so forceful that my upper body was pulled backwards together with it, and I had to take one step back to keep the balance. But there was nobody and nothing. There wasn't anything that my backpack could have caught on, nor I heard the toilet door opening or closing the whole time I was there. I spent 1 year in the creepy building until it went on refurbishment, but I definitely made sure not to use the toilet on the lobby. It's a story a mate from my university told me. He not only entered the uni later than others, but also took a few years off in between for various personal issues. We nicknamed him Mr. Dino, as of dinosaur, citing his older age. But Dino never minded it. He was ever friendly and easygoing that we all loved him, in fact. Anyway, it's from his second semester in the uni. As old as our uni was, the dormitory building was also very old. It was actually already gone by the time I entered the uni to make a room for the new building. Anyway, the building used to be the dorm for female students, but due to the complaints it being too far from the campus, they switched it with a boys' dorm that year. On the first day there, as Dino and his roommate unpacking in their room, they heard somebody arguing with the assistant dorm manager in front of the room next door.
I pay exactly the same money as others. And why do I have to live in the room where somebody died?
The student complained. In the end, the manager relocated the complaining student, and the neighboring room was left empty. Dino got curious about the history of the room and asked other female students who used to stay in that dorm building. Apparently, a female student who used to occupy that room killed herself a few years prior. She actually didn't die in that room, but other students started refusing to take that room. Sad story, but Dino didn't give much thought about it. His roommate was a bit of a party boy, and Dino was often alone in his room. One thing he couldn't deny was the occasional sound of footsteps in high heels walking around the building in the middle of the night. It was all boy dorm building, including the managers. Besides, the curfew was at 11, and one could not freely enter or exit the building after that. There was no one who should be walking around in high heels at night, yet many other guys also heard it, and it quickly became a mystery among occupants. Then came the festival season in the uni. Dino drank a lot from the early evening after a particularly exciting day. He phoned his roommate to wait up for him because he had so much amusing stories to tell about the day. By the time he came back to his room, it was well past 11, thanks to the relaxed curfew time for the festive season. He found his room dark and the roommate already in bed, with a duvet pulled all the way over his head. Drunk and reckless, Dino tapped on him.
Oi, oi, sleeping already? I told you I have so much to tell you,
said he, and just continued with his story. Though his roomie didn't move or pull the duvet down, he seemed actually listening to Dino, making occasional, okay, remarks. In the middle of the story, Dino's phone rang, and he picked it up.
Hey, when are you coming back? Are you going to keep me up all night for your BS story?
It was Dino's roomie. But then, who was this on bed to whom he'd been talking to for the past 10 minutes? While Dino was confused, the person under the duvet said,
Carry on.
Dino jumped up and ran out of the room and bumped into somebody at the hallway. It was his roomie coming out from their room. Dino was so drunk that he went into their next door, the empty room that used to belong to the dead girl. Realizing that, Dino dragged his roomie back to the next door and switched on the light. The room was empty. The bed was clean with no sign anybody having lied down on it recently. Dino couldn't sleep all night, shivering under his duvet. Soon the rumor went around about his experience, and in the end, the management permanently locked up the particular room. And coincidentally, the sound of high-heeled footsteps also stopped manifesting afterwards. My university has a very small campus, leaving very little space to hang around or rest. The biggest reason I signed up for the poetry club was actually its club room. It was just in the right place where I frequently passed by between lectures, and it provided a much-needed space to hang, rest, study, etc. The room was in the basement, which was quiet and kept cool in summer. Strangely though, I noticed not many really cared to hang around there. Well, what do I care? The club room became almost my own private space, and I even started leaving my books and stuffs there. One rainy day, I was just coming down the stairs to the club room when I heard strange giggles from the inside of the room. Maybe somebody was there for a change? But when I stood in front of the door, I knew that wasn't the case because no light was on. It being on basement, one always needed to turn on the light. Suppressing the strange sensation creeping up, I burst open the door. It was blue. The face of a man was lying on the back of the sofa, and it was impossibly blue for a human complexion. "Shit!" I shouted and threw my umbrella at it and turned on the light. The blue face wasn't there anymore. Still feeling cold sweat running down my forehead, I walked around the sofa to see if there wasn't something behind it. There was. A fellow club member was lying there unconscious and with a paper white face. I shook him about, but he didn't wake up, so I carried him out to the uni nurse's room. When he woke up, he explained that he was taking a nap on the sofa and got sleep paralysis. And he too saw the blue face. He even remembered seeing me throwing my umbrella, but he could not wake up. The rumor went around about the incident, and only then senior members told me that the club room had been rumored to have weird things going on in it. For a time, I avoided visiting the club room by myself. But one day, the weather was sunny and bright, and I really needed to prepare some presentation. So once again, I went to the club room and worked on it. When I was almost finishing the job, a loud metallic noise rang. It seemed to be coming from the metal office cabinets. There were 3 of them. One was used as a bookshelf, the other various junks, and the third one was broken and was turned around for its doors to face the wall. I was a bit surprised, but couldn't see anything, so turned my attention to my laptop. It rang now twice. I turned to look at the cabinet and saw one of the doors opened ajar. I closed it loudly. I just wanted to quickly finish what I was doing and get out of there quickly. I flipped through the presentation slides for one last check. The moment it reached the last page, it rang 3 times. But I could not turn to look at the cabinet this time. I just stared at the laptop screen, probably for a good 20 seconds. Then a fellow club member barged in saying how nice the weather was, etc. He asked me what was wrong to see me frozen there. I just pointed the laptop screen showing the last black page of the presentation slide. He too saw what I saw. The blue face peeping through the crack-opened cabinet door, reflected on the black screen. Without a word, we just shot out of the room. It goes without saying that I didn't go back to the club room a while. But it couldn't be left at that forever. We complained to the uni authority, but of course, they said our claim was nonsense and would give the space to other clubs should we not want it. That wasn't what we wanted. All sorts of ideas were discussed among members, including seeking a shaman, but such would be too much of a fuss and bound to create unwanted rumors. In the end, we chose to try a simpler method, to play the Christian radio channel in the room. Surely a ghost wouldn't like to listen to hymns and phrases from the Bible. We bought a cheap radio and all agreed to set the radio on the Christian channel at all times. It seemed to work for a while. When midterm was over, I got a message from a fellow club member. He complained that somebody kept changing the radio channel. Well, it could be just somebody wanted to listen to a different program, I thought, or hoped. But one day, when I opened the door of the club room, the dark space was full of static noise from the radio. The tuning knob of the radio was rolled all the way to one end. It clearly wasn't somebody having wanted to tune in another station. We discussed once again and decided to pull out the tuning knob so that one could not change the channel easily, and put the radio away from easy reach. It seemed to work for some time again. And one day, I got a call from a female club member. She wasn't herself and shouted,
I saw it! The blue face! It shook its head madly. I saw it! You must come, right now!
When I got to the club, she was still sobbing and crying, while other fellow members trying to calm her down. When she walked into the club room, she explained, it was silent, and she saw a blue thing floating around. The blue face, nodding and shaking as if dancing. Underneath him was the radio broken in half. Club members gathered one more time, but didn't really know what to do next. Then one senior member walked in with a box. Inside was a dog, a Schnauzer breed. The grim atmosphere flipped all of a sudden, everybody cooing the dog. The member who brought the dog with said, Schnauzer means snout, and as the name implies, Schnauzer breed is said to be able to bite away anything harmful and malicious. She suggested that we keep the dog to fend off whatever there was in the club room. I don't know what she explained was true or not, but Marie the dog truly changed the atmosphere in the club room. Everybody frequented the room to play and care for the dog, and the room never felt more warm and comfortable. Marie occasionally barked into the empty space ferociously, which gave a bit of a creep, but probably the reputation of Schnauzer was true after all. One day we found Marie sniff and scratch on one of the metal cabinets in the room, the old one that was turned around. She just carried on despite of us calling her. I felt something was up there, so called in a few other male members and turned the cabinet around. Loud noise rang inside, clearly something weighty inside shaken around as we moved the cabinet. And we were all shocked to find what it was. It was a mannequin, just the body of it without its head, and it was all painted in blue. Nobody knew what it was, why it was there, but it seemed a clue that was finally going to explain the blue face. We tracked down one of the older members of the club and could hear what the mannequin was for. It was a prop for the annual club event one year and was painted blue to attract more attention. By the time the event was over, its head was gone missing and everybody just forgot about it.
I didn't really like the mannequin at the time. Guys said they felt as if it glared at them as they painted it blue. The then club leader who brought in the mannequin said he just picked it up from a recycle bin, but who knows?
The senior member said. We got rid of the old mannequin and we didn't see the blue face again. Since then, I went to military service and didn't associate with the club afterwards, but I hear the spooky rumor about the club room was still alive, and they would decorate the room in spooky theme for their annual events nowadays. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I wonder if you could relate to some of the stories today. Was there any rumors about ghosts in your uni? I myself had a bit of breakdown in the first years in the university, and I hardly ever stayed around apart from attending lectures, so probably I had no chance to run into a ghost, even if there were one. If you enjoyed my work, please give it a like and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel. This channel introduces you the various aspects of life in Korea through bizarre and paranormal accounts. If you'd support me more directly, I also have a Buy Me a Coffee account. The link's in the description. Buy Me a Coffee supporters get an early access to my new video. Thank you. Until next Sunday, stay safe and take care.